So, I'm not the first person to notice this, but obviously we know that when the left accuses you of something, it's usually something they do. They're very big on projection. They accuse the right of racism because they think everything is about race because they're racists. So they accuse us of racism because they're racist. They accuse us of sexism, and they treat women, feminists especially, they treat women like these irrational little flowers who fold up as anything. It's like, we don't do that, but they accuse us of that. But the important one that they're doing now to Donald Trump is they accuse us of going insane because they are going insane. They are going nuts. We are in the midst. When conservatives are very bad at discussing the culture, they really do not know the culture. And I despair of it because even our brightest guys who seem to be talking about the culture sometimes are not doing it very well. And one of the things that we mistake is we mistake the products of the last culture, which is like what's happening now, Donald Trump, who's the product of the culture of the last 50 years, with the culture, what's happening in the culture now. Donald Trump is the creation. What we're experiencing now is the breakdown of feminist culture. We're watching the feminist culture of the last decades collapse. So the minute Donald Trump, took office, we had women walking around the streets with hats, which represented the fact that their vaginas are now where their brains are supposed to be. So we're watching feminist culture break down entirely. The Me Too movement. We're suddenly finding, all those guys who support, even the woman, that actress who was the head of the Me Too movement, has now been charged with abusing a guy. We're finding out that feminist sexuality and feminism in the workplace didn't really work out that well for women. So that's all kind of breaking down. But Trump is a creation of feminist culture because feminism, how they say with guns that if you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns. Well, under feminist culture, they outlawed masculinity. So only outlaws could be masculine. And if you look back at the culture of the last, 20, 30 years, what are the shows that feature the most masculine men? You get The Sopranos, you get Breaking Bad. I was at the Sony lot pitching a television show to this woman. And I look out the window, this producer, and I look out the window and there's a van outside. And people are walking up to this van and touching it like it is the true cross. Seriously. And finally, as I finished my pitch, I said, what is that? What is that? And she said, that's the van where the guy in Breaking Bad cooks the meth. And I said, they're worshiping the van of a meth dealer. That's what we're doing. And if you watch Breaking Bad, people always say that, I've heard this from a dozen women in Hollywood who work in Hollywood. They'll say to me, well, people support and have sympathy with the meth dealer in Breaking Bad because he's doing it for his family. That's not why. If you watch the first episode of Breaking Bad, he's a wimp. He is henpecked. His wife controls him. Everybody dominates him. And what we watch is through becoming a meth dealer, he becomes a man. And that's why he's appealing. Tony Soprano, the reason we follow him is because he's a man. Donald Trump is a product of a culture in which only outlaws can be men. That is why he is so disturbing to us when he does the stuff he does. And yet, we support him and we sympathize with him because we see that they outlawed being a man. And this is a guy who comes in and says, I don't care what you say about me. I don't care. Did I say the N-word? Too bad, pal. That's too bad. It's just, I'm not going to let you tell me what to say. I'm not going to let you tell me what to think. I'm not going to let you tell me what to do. And like what we do and what has happened now, since that outlaw male has triumphed, the Breaking Bad guy is essentially running the country. Although he's not an outlaw in the sense of criminal, he's just an outlaw in the sense that he's against the culture. The left has gone insane. It's gone insane. I hear people sometimes say, I heard Ben say this. He said that a man who thinks he's a woman, a transgender man, is mentally ill. I don't think he's mentally ill. He may have, physical things. We don't know what's going on inside him. He may not be mentally ill. But the guy who tells you he's a woman because he says so, he's mentally ill, and he's the editor of the New York Times. The people who are talking on air are nuts. And so that's what they are accusing Donald Trump of. They are, you want to see how nuts they are? I put together, we had the guys here put together a little montage of what they're just saying this weekend about Donald Trump. Here is the nutball montage from the left.
In Nazi Germany, Hitler told people what they were going to do and assumed that no one was going to get in his way. And Donald Trump has assumed that no one would get in his way. And so far, if you look at the silence of Congress, He's right.
This is a white supremacist country, and we have to deal with that every day in everything, in how we relate to the police and how we relate to jobs and how we relate to the criminal justice system, in everything.
I believe he wants to start a race war in this country.
Well, he's not rounding people up and murdering them without any, due process.
He'd certainly like to.
Well, anyway. I don't think you can say that definitively.
Get out. That's the left. Over one weekend, Katie Tour saying, well, he's not rounding up people and killing them. And the woman who says that he'd like to be rounding up people, that's a woman from Knucklehead Row. That's Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times. These people are Looney Tunes, okay? They are Looney Tunes. So over the weekend, there's this story. And by the way, Molly Hemingway, I got to point this out. Molly Hemingway has said, she had a tweet that came out, if you think of media coverage and other resistance activity as a Westworld-like loop, where they alone are unaware they're repeating themselves, it all makes more sense. They're on the obstruction loop. They'll soon hit the 25th Amendment one again. That's where you replace the president because he's nuts. Okay. So that was something she said like a year ago. That was something Molly said like a year ago. So over the weekend, Maggie Haberman and her colleague at the New York Times, they write a story. And let's remember that Maggie Haberman, in January 2015, there was a strategic memo from the Clinton campaign. The memo was called Shaping a Public Narrative. This is from Cheryl Atkinson's book, right? And Clinton officials described Maggie Haberman, who then worked for Politico, as an ideal, friendly journalist willing to generate positive press for the Clinton campaign. We feel that it's important to go with what is safe and what has worked in the past. We've had a very good relationship with Maggie Haberman of Politico over the past year. We've had her tee up stories for us and have never been disappointed. That's Maggie Haberman. Now she's the New York Times White House correspondent. And they hired her after this stuff came out, right? So, there's a Clinton operative, there's a Clinton, toady. Put her on the White House to cover Trump. Well, I guess maybe they thought she was going to be covering, I don't know, did they hire her after Trump? I can't remember. But maybe they thought she was going to be covering Clinton so they could give her all the love they wanted to give her. So now they run a story about Donald McGahn, who is White House counsel, that he's talking to Robert Mueller. And that's a breathless story from Maggie Haberman and one other reporter. And it's about that McGahn has given a mix of damaging and favorable information about the president, but he said Mr. Trump did not go beyond his legal authority as a president, but he's been given all this stuff. And the original story was just full of like this thing that McGahn had become John Dean. He's turning it all over to the Mueller investigation. So Trump is furious. And he goes off and he tweets. And he says, the failing New York Times wrote a fake piece today implying that because White House counsel Don McGahn was giving hours of testimony to the special counsel, he must be a John Dean type rat. But I allowed him and all the others to testify and have demanded transparency so this rigged and disgusting witch hunt can come to a close. So many lives have been ruined over nothing. McCarthyism at its worst, yet Mueller and his gang of Dems refuse to look at the real crimes on the other side, and the media is even worse. So first of all, in order for McGahn to testify to Robert Mueller, he's the White House counsel, right? So they have to waive executive privilege. So Donald Trump waived executive privilege. It is proof positive that what he is saying is true, that he let the guy go over there. And so what the Times does is they put together stuff from Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon said, we shouldn't waive executive privilege. It's dangerous. We shouldn't. Basically, they put together this idea that Trump allowed this to happen, but somehow it's all gone out of control. And Trump objects because it's a phony story. It's a ridiculous story. The way it is written is ridiculous and false. And also on top of which, where's the information coming from? It's got to be coming from Mueller, right? It's got to be coming from the Mueller investigation. So Trump goes off and he puts out, his usual number of tweets, just absolutely condemning this. So remember what Molly said. Molly said, first they go for obstruction of justice, and this is what they say Mueller is investigating. When that doesn't stick, he's crazy. So in reaction to this, Joe Scarborough tweets, anyone who has known Trump for years and doesn't have a stake in his political career or the GOP says the same. He is unwell and has been getting progressively worse over the past 18 months. Molly's right. They're in Westworld. They're playing out, they're robots playing out the resistance loop, and they don't know it. Here's Brian Stelter saying the same thing.
There's so much wrong with these tweets. He even misspells the word counsel, and it doesn't stop there. Here are 6 of the tweets today. At one point, he's comparing Mueller to Joseph McCarthy. you'd look at this if you were in some other foreign capital and you'd say, is the president okay? Is he all right?
He's nuts. He's a crazy man. They're saying he's Hitler. I remember, by the way, that was Reagan's daughter. I remember when Reagan was Hitler. I remember when George W. Bush was Hitler. Everybody that disagrees with the left is Hitler. And then they have, they just have to pay the president some respect, I think.
RESPICT.
Maybe they should pay him some respect. I don't know. Whatever he says, this is who we're dealing with. These are their best guys, and they're yelling about Trump is insane. And then I love this stuff. This is just, they are so comical at this point. Chuck Todd has Rudy Giuliani on. And, let's think about this for a minute, right? The Mueller investigation is clearly linking to Clinton, Toady, Maggie Haberman at the New York Times. Clearly they're leaking, which should be illegal. I think it is illegal to do. And so now, they're obviously looking to get him on obstruction of justice. And of course, once you are interviewed by the feds, make a mistake, say something that's a little overblown. And, Trump is not exactly the most precise guy in his speech. Trump goes in there and is interviewed by Mueller. They get him on lying because he says, I remember how my crowds were bigger than Obama's. They go out and find, his crowds were 15 people less, and they bring him up on federal charges. And so Giuliani is trying to protect him. So Chuck Todd brings Giuliani on, and Giuliani is trying to explain to him that, you can get caught in a perjury trap, even if you're not committing real perjury, the kind of perjury that we think of as perjury. So he gets him, they get talking, and here's what Giuliani says.
Look, I'm not going to be rushed into having him testify so that he gets trapped into perjury. And when you tell me that, he should testify because he's going to tell the truth and he shouldn't worry, well, that's so silly because it's somebody's version of the truth, not the truth. He didn't have a conversation.
Truth is
about,
truth. I don't mean to go like...
No, it isn't truth. Truth isn't truth. The President of the United States says, I didn't...
Truth isn't truth. Mr. Mayor, do you realize what...
No.
This is going to become a bad meme.
Don't do this to me.
You see, Giuliani knows exactly what happens. He said something a little awkward because Chuck Todd said truth is truth, which obviously is not true in a case like this. In a case like this, it's who says what and where they can set you up and how they can get you. And so he says truth isn't truth. And so that becomes the big headline, just exactly like Mitt Romney saying, I put women in binders. I had all these women in binders. And suddenly that became proof that Mitt Romney was abusing these poor women, shoving them into binders. Just there, all you could see was their high heels coming out of the binder. It was disgusting. It was a horrible, it was like an atrocity, an atrocity. Because they own the echo chamber. So they can take that out of context where he was clearly saying you only get a version of the truth. You don't get the truth from people. They take it out of context and they think, oh my gosh, we have him. We've got him. It's the echo chamber. He's in the echo chamber. And they're going to repeat this forever. What they don't understand, they have not gotten yet, is that Trump has an echo chamber too. And some people on the right who are so anti-Trump, they don't understand that this is a good thing. It is a good thing that Trump is creating another kind of echo chamber. They don't understand. We're not listening to them anymore. They're nuts. They're sitting around saying that Trump is Hitler. They're saying he wants to round people up and shoot them. They're saying he wants to start a race war. They're saying they're living, my favorite, they're living in the Handmaid's Tale. I just had to have this picture of these left-wing billionaire matrons sitting out on Martha's Vineyard saying, yes, it's terrible, it's like we're in the Handmaid's Tale, darling. Would you bring me another cocktail, please? Yes, we're in the Handmaid's Tale. They're living in this imaginary world, and they think we're going to join them too. And then when Trump strikes back, it's like daddy's home. When Trump strikes back, it's like, oh, he hit, oh my, it's like, the little kid who annoys you and annoys you and annoys you, and you finally give him a smack, and it's like, what did you do to me? That's what they act like. He takes away this perfidious gas bag. John Brennan is he's a ex-CIA director and communist, accusing the president of treason, right? And Trump says, that's out of line. I'm taking away your security clearance so you can't go around cashing in on your government service by calling the president of the United States, treason. So the gas bag tries to pull this back. First, he tries to pull it back. And even on MSNBC, they're calling him on the fact that he called the president a traitor. So here he's trying to dial it back.
For the President of the United States to continue to prevaricate on this issue
I think, does a great injustice and a disservice to the men and women of the intelligence, law enforcement community, and does a great disservice to the citizens of the United States. And that's why I said it was nothing short of treasonous. I didn't mean that he committed treason, but it was a term that I used, nothing short of treasonous.
Well, you didn't mean that he committed treason, though.
I said it's nothing short of treasonous. That was the term that I used, yeah.
That's the, if we diagram the sentence, nothing short of treasonous means it's treason.
This, Rachel Maddow, that is Maddow, right? It's not Knowles, that's Maddow. Yeah, no, Rachel Maddow says, no, Michael Knowles, lookalike Rachel Maddow, is herself is saying, if you say it's nothing short of treasonous, he committed treason. Well, I didn't say he committed treason, but then Chuck Todd has him on and he's back again. This is like where this guy is. After getting one smack in the face, he's suddenly a toddler who doesn't know what he's talking about.
Do you regret essentially accusing the president of treason? Do you regret some of the things you have said?
I called his behavior treasonous, which is to betray one's trust and to aid and abet the enemy, and I stand very much by that claim.
You are the former CIA director accusing the sitting president of the United States. It's not a private citizen. A lot of people hear the former CIA director accusing the sitting president of the United States of treason. That's a monumental accusation.
Well, I think these are abnormal times.
See, even Chuck Todd knows you got to pay the president some respect.
RESPICT.
Or some respect. You've got to pay the president some respect, because without respect, the whole world, if we don't respect one another, the whole world falls apart. What I love is, John Brennan, the reason he's such a gas bag is because he was at the center of a conspiracy to use our intelligence services to spy on a political candidate. That is what he did. He pushed this completely unproven Steele document, these unproven allegations from the opposition party. He pushed them on Comey. He leaked them to the press. He did all this stuff, and he knows it, and he's basically covering it up with all this gas baggery. So now there's suddenly a danger to these guys that their gas baggery is going to cost them their very expensive security clearance. And suddenly you watch them, they're scrambling like roaches. James Clapper, who's also involved in this, who also, like John Brennan, lied to Congress under oath, right? This is another guy who lied to Congress under oath, and they're talking to us about how evil Donald Trump is. I don't think Donald Trump has lied to anybody under oath. I haven't seen him do that. They call him a liar, but he hasn't perjured himself that I've seen. Here's James Clapper dumping his fellow spy. He's throwing John Brennan under the bus.
John is sort of like a freight train, and he's going to say what's on his mind. I think, though, that the common denominator among all of us that have been speaking up, though, is genuine concern about the jeopardy or threats to institutions and values. And although we may express that in different ways, and I think that's what this really is about. But John and his rhetoric has become, I think, an issue in and of itself.
John and his rhetoric have become an issue in and of itself. Sounds like John Brennan is losing some of his colleagues' respect. That's
SPICT.
I can't stop. I can't stop it. I'm just like, oh my goodness, respect. So these guys expect us they expect us to respect them, and yet they, they're calling Trump insane, and they are going insane. They're going insane because their culture is falling apart. Their culture is genuinely falling apart. Every word they told us about women was untrue. Every word they told us about men, untrue. Most of the stuff they told us about the treatment of black people after a certain period in American history where there was shameful treatment of black people everywhere, but here too, all of it untrue. And those lies are falling apart. And Trump, because he is an outlaw male, because he is doing that thing that we kind of respected and liked when we watched The Sopranos, when we watched Breaking Bad, he's doing that thing where he is breaking the rules that they established. They're falling apart. Their culture is collapsing inward, and they're going nuts. I mean, what you are looking, when somebody at the New York Times, which used to be a newspaper, right? I'm not kidding about this. When I call it a former newspaper, back in the 80s, say, the New York Times was a newspaper reporting the news, a little left-wing leaning, sure, but I mean, it was not peddling fake news. Now, it is peddling fake news. They have a thing, there are these new documents coming in about Bruce Orr, and we are going to find out some tremendous stuff about this guy, right? This is the guy who was the Associate Deputy Attorney General, number 4 at the Justice Department. His wife worked for Fusion GPS, remember the Oppo research team that went after Trump for paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, and also was related to that Russian lawyer whose name I can never pronounce, who had the meeting with Don Jr. So they're in the thick of this Oppo operation against Donald Trump. Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, works for them. She's feeding information to him. He's feeding information direct from the head of Fusion GPS to the FBI, okay? Long after Steele has been fired and is not supposed to be working for them, he's still pumping this anti-Trump information into him. And Kimberly Strassel, who has been really on top of this at the Wall Street Journal, writes a whole piece about this. The New York Times runs a story headlined, "Embracing Conspiracy Theory, Trump Escalates Attack on Bruce Orr." Now, Bruce Orr, remember, number 4 at the Justice Department, it's a big deal, has since been demoted. So this is their lead. President Trump threatened on Friday to quickly revoke the security clearance of Bruce Orr, a little-known Justice Department official. And they go on in this vein forever, trying to convince us that Bruce Orr is a nobody. It's just a conspiracy theory. I mean, this is because this is to insulate Orr from these new documents that have just been turned over after a massive fight with Congress. After a massive fight, they have finally extracted Orr's notes and his emails and all that stuff. By the end of this week, I think we will know a lot of stuff that went on that is absolutely shameful. And the New York Times is running interference for it. If you work for the New York Times, you wake up every morning to work with liars and clowns. I mean, that is what you do. That is who you are. You know, like I come here and sure, I work with Knowles, but otherwise I work with a bunch of really good, honest people. We argue, we discuss, we try and be fair. If I'm not fair, Shapiro will come in here and tell me, I will tell him. We will talk about these things constantly. At the New York Times, you are working for people who lie. You are a liar working for people who lie. That is the thing. So when they say that Trump's a liar, and look, Trump ain't Honest Abe. Nobody's going to say that he is. Trump is not Honest Abe Lincoln. Trump exaggerates, he ducks, he dives, especially when he's done something wrong and he's caught, he lies outwardly. But he's up against crazy lying people. That's who he's up against. And they're calling him crazy. They're calling him a liar because that's what the left does. They project their faults onto you.